Deb, thank you so much for having this conversation with us as part of this trauma summit. And it's so great to get to know you and to be engaging in conversation. And so thank you for this.
Mm,
So my first question is, how might we define safety?
it's a great question, and one that I think many of us have been thinking about a lot in the recent months, now years probably. It's interesting how the time just keeps expanding, right? So,
Yeah.
but safety, for me, when I think about it, safety is an embodied experience. It is not a cognitive description,
Okay.
right? You can't define it that way and then create it from in your brain. It's an embodied experience. And if we look through the lens of the nervous system, it's really a moment when the cues of safety that are coming into our nervous system outweigh the cues of danger. And
Mm,
in that moment, we feel safe. We feel an embodied sense of safe. Or as I like to say nowadays, we feel safe enough,
mm,
right? Because I like that qualifier, safe enough
yeah.
to move forward, to engage, to navigate the world, to connect, right?
Yeah.
So for me, if I think about it biologically, that's what safety is, and I think it's easy to then work with that concept when you have a descriptor like that, and the cues of
Mm,
safety outweigh the cues of danger, not outnumber,
mhm,
right, but outweigh the cues of danger, because there are certain cues that carry a lot of weight in my system.
mhm.
And so, there's an environmental cue that can outweigh several embodied cues of danger, right?
Yeah.
And for other people, it's different. Like for you, it may be different.
Yeah.
Which pathway for you
Is safety?
works? Yeah,
I
or
think of,
or or first,
yeah. Yeah.
the inside, the environmental, or the relational.
Yeah. I mean, when I think about safety, and I love that you're naming it as an embodied experience and not something cognitively, a cognitive conception, because I don't like the way I describe safety as well is like the ability to rest in myself as myself and meet myself and the world at the same time. And
Mm.
so it's not like this ultimate, like I'm unbelievably protected. It's the allowance to be here and be in relationship.
That's lovely. That's lovely. It's, we're safe in that way we
Yeah.
describe it. We can be accessible.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
can be vulnerable,
Yeah.
and all these are really um, qualities that bring us into connection inside, with our own being, as you were so beautifully saying, and then
Yeah.
with others and in the world. Yeah.
Can we describe, I don't know why, when you said accessible, it gave me chills. And so, like, there's something like really,
Yeah,
like,
Steve talks about accessible a
yeah.
lot. That's sort of his word to talk about when we are in this state of autonomic regulation,
Mhm,
we then become accessible to others,
mhm,
right? We are sending a message
mm,
to another being, another biology, as he
mhm,
would say, that we are here and able to be safe and come into connection. That
yeah,
makes it accessible. I like accessible.
yeah,
It is a lovely word, isn't it?
yeah,
Vulnerable carries a different quality to it.
yeah,
And I do like the word vulnerable as well. I
yeah,
can be vulnerable, safely vulnerable. I
yeah,
can show up and be here. But accessible has a different flavor to it, doesn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's this really interesting thing that, I've been talking about a lot, and I think you and I have talked about too, which is like where the barometer of safety gets twisted from trauma. And so like me not being accessible, me not being vulnerable, me um being in situations that are quote unquote unhealthy is what I associate with safety.
Yeah. Yeah. Our system is shaped
Yeah.
through our lived experience. And if my lived experience leads my nervous system and my brain, because they work together, to expect certain things, then
Yeah.
that becomes the neural expectation,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I hate to call it normal, because I think that's another word that I don't that puts a label on it differently, but it becomes the nervous system's expectation that this is what is going to happen, and I can predict that, and then that begins to feel comfortable, feel predictable, which usually leads us to thinking, oh, I know what to do with this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And many of the people we work with, I hear that from them a lot. It's not so much that they are wanting to be in what they're in, but
Mhm.
they know it. It's
Mm.
predictable. And
Yeah.
so in some way they think I can manage this, I can deal with this because I know what to expect.
Yeah.
And if I move and begin to create something different, that's terrifying because I have no idea what to expect.
Yeah.
Right. So, moving toward connection
Yeah.
in a different way, which, I would, sort of equate with moving towards safety, but calling it moving towards connection in a different way,
Yeah.
is scary. And, we work with our clients to,
Um,
gently and in small ways,
yeah.
um, see what would happen if you did this thing a little bit differently,
Yeah.
right? Because it's in those tiny movements that we shape towards connection. So shaping out of protection into connection. And even the word safety, and I know we started by talking about defining it, the word safety is often a cue of danger to many of our clients, right? Even the word,
Yeah.
right? So we try to find other ways of exploring the concept of safety, but not even saying the word safety.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think what you're saying right now is so important, like discerning the difference between neural expectation and this idea of safety. And I don't think I've discerned that before in my own language of saying, a neural expectation has a perception of safety because we can be in preparation for the perceived threat or danger, but it doesn't carry with it often that accessibleness or that vulnerability that does come with the embodied sense of safety. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, yeah, yeah, and for true well-being to
Yeah.
emerge for us humans, we have to both, work with those cues of danger to shift them, resolve them, reduce them,
Yeah.
and we have to actively experience the cues of safety that are available to us, whether it's from the environment, or from a face, a person, an energy that doesn't feel too much or not enough, either one,
Yeah.
right? In that just right category of, oh, you're sending me the welcome in the way that my nervous system can receive it, which is
Mhm.
the other thing. Right. I mean, I can be anchored in safety, anchored in regulation, and
Yeah.
have an abundance of that energy that I can send towards you, and it can totally overwhelm your nervous system.
Yeah.
It can feel way too much,
Yeah.
too scary, too much, get away from me. That is dangerous,
Yeah.
right? When just a hint of it might be just what is needed in the moment.
Yeah.
So even safety is along a continuum, right?
Yeah.
Or how we invite others in
Yeah.
has to be along that continuum. So yeah, but just jumping back for a minute, as we're shaped through our lived experience,
Mhm.
these neural expectations emerge, and then I think our job as therapists or helping professionals of any kind is to be able to interrupt those neural expectations
Mm.
in a way that doesn't overwhelm the other nervous system, but not to play into those neural expectations,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
And it's such a tricky thing to kind of create a wedge in between the reflexive nature of those neural expectations and the behavior that follows it. It's almost like a couple steps of like put a wedge between the behavior and the reflexive expectation, and then a wedge between what's actually here and the expectation of what could come.
Yeah, I like that way of thinking
Yeah.
about it, that two-step process. And my job, the way I can begin to do that is to stay anchored in my own regulated nervous system,
Yeah.
right? Which
Yeah.
which then feels safe and regulated to me and allows me to simply stay in that.
Yeah.
Because if your expectation, your neural expectation, and then your brain story is that when you get big and activated, the person you're with is either going to get big and activated back or disappear because it's overwhelming,
Yeah.
and I just stay present and curious, then
Yeah.
I am giving your system a different experience,
Yeah.
interrupting the neural expectation,
Yeah.
right? And so for me to simply hold that space, that's my job,
Yeah.
right? Don't need to do anything else about it in that moment. That's the step one you're talking about.
Yeah.
Put a wedge in that place. Oh, something different happened.
Yeah.
Right. And the nervous system gets it. The brain may take a while. It may keep trying. Right.
Yeah.
We have clients we work with who we think they're testing us all the time.
Yeah.
Right. It's their nervous system that has an expectation, and it's
Yeah.
just getting played out over and over. And the
Yeah.
more I can sit in regulation and offer that that sense of safe energy,
Yeah.
then the other nervous system begins to tune in differently and think, well, maybe not. Maybe something different will happen, and it will predictably happen. So it's that predictability that's
Yeah.
so important for us to be sending predictably regulated, welcoming energy, because that will then begin to create a sense of safety.
Yeah. And discern between the expectation and actual safety. And I love what you were saying too before about it's not just about an all or nothing aspect of safety. That's not actually what we need, especially if we come from a trauma background, having experienced trauma. That if too much accessibility, too much availed vulnerability all at one time feels terrifying, and that flood of that feeling can actually re-traumatize us in some ways, because it's that same flooding, that same inability to metabolize and regulate what's coming at us.
Right. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
great way to put it because yes, a lack of or too much, either
Yeah.
one, floods and that flood then takes us to our survival state,
Yeah.
right? So, playing around with right degree of connection is so
Yeah.
important, and it is on a continuum. And I've had a
Yeah.
client who would, dip a toe in the feeling of ventral, and that was
Mm.
it.
Yep.
It was great. I said, "We just dip a toe. That's fine. You can dip a toe for the next 2 years. It'll be fine." Right. And as soon as you offer the permission
Yeah.
to dip a toe,
Yeah.
whenever you want,
Yeah.
right? I often will play around with, because I like to play with energy, and
Mhm.
I'll often play around with clients to say, how about if I'm anchored in this ventral regulating energy that in theory anyway should feel safe, but we'll see, so how about if I just put it, just out here between the two of us, right? And you decide
Yeah.
when you want to, reach out, dip a toe in, dip a finger in, feel what it feels like. You get to control when you do that and for how long and how much,
Yeah.
right? And it's a beautiful way for clients to kind of feel, oh, I actually can, have some management over what's coming at me and how I receive it and what I receive. And so
Yeah.
it's been an interesting sort of experiment with, receiving the energy of safety,
Mm.
but in a way that a client gets to choose how they receive it.
Yeah. And that restructuring of agency is such a paramount technique in healing trauma, because often, I mean, I know I'm not saying this to you, but to everyone who's listening, like that sort of helplessness is such a common experience when that flooding has occurred, because we couldn't navigate in the opening of the dam, so to speak, of our nervous system, and the flooding that happened.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah. And you can say
yeah.
that to me because it happens to me too. Happens to all of us, right? It's just that
Yeah.
it happens to our trauma survivor clients more
Yeah.
regularly, more frequently,
Yeah.
right? But it happens to every human. As you were saying that, I was remembering a time recently when I felt that flood and the
Mm.
helplessness,
Mm.
right? And then it's either going to take you to sympathetic, so much energy. I got to fight my way out of this or run away, or dorsal, just collapse and disappear. My system goes to dorsal, so I was having a flavor of that memory, right? And that's really interesting for us because the flavor of the memory can also overwhelm really quickly,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I've got enough distance from it and enough, hopefully regulation in my system so that I can reflect on the flavor of the memory
Mhm.
and be curious about it.
Yeah.
That's where we're heading towards
Yeah.
in our work, is that you can bring up the flavor
Mm.
and you can still stay enough of that regulated energy to be curious,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's for those who are on their healing journey, it's such a great marker of in being in the process of healing where you can taste the flavors of the past but not be flooded by it, and
Yep.
be in that state of curiosity, because it's nearly impossible to be both unsafe and curious.
Exactly, exactly. I think that's a great way to put it, because curiosity is what we call an emergent property, meaning it comes from the
Yeah.
state of ventral regulation. So,
Yeah.
and again, it's on a continuum. I just have to have what I call a critical mass of
Yeah.
that energy alive and active in my system. I don't have to be fully in it,
Yeah.
not immersed in it. I just have enough so that in that moment, I have enough of that safety, that energy of safety, so I can be curious.
Yeah.
Because once I lose enough of that energy of safety, I biologically can no longer be curious. Not
Yeah.
that I don't want to. Biology says no, curiosity is not good here, not helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And from a developmental perspective, we know that even our movement patterns that form over, especially that first year of life, they're not like, maybe, I'm a neurodevelopmental therapist, so I love that first year of life and movement. And so if, we might watch a baby and go, oh, they just programmed to then crawl, but it actually doesn't work that way. It's through the curiosity, the hunger of discovery of the environment in themselves, that they stumble into the next movement pattern. They are like, what's that? And they come into rolling. And what's this? And from being on hands and knees, they fall forward into a crawl, and it's a reflexive happening. And so it's like, really, truly, our developmental evolution as humans emerges when it's possible
yeah,
to feel safe enough to be curious.
yeah, yeah. It's a lovely way to think about it, because you really can't. You can't be curious. You can't explore. You can't even imagine the future
Yeah.
without enough safety, which
Yeah.
is why so many of us and so many of our clients are either stuck in the past,
Yeah.
because it pulls us back, or in this, but we can't imagine. Somebody says, well, can you imagine
Yeah.
3 months from now? No,
Yeah.
right? I can barely imagine a minute from now because it feels so unsafe
Yeah.
in my being,
Yeah.
right? I have to survive this minute, and that's all I can do. This energy is totally focused on it. Even though our brain may be trying to do something different, our biology says I have to feel safe enough in this moment, because it's all about survival,
Yeah.
right? All about survival. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Mm.
And it makes me go, and I love what you said in the very beginning, where you shifted the word from safety to safe enough. And
Mhm.
it feels like a very Goddard approach where where it's like, and it makes me go, well, what is that, line? And maybe this is too my, getting to the minutia, but like, what is that line of safe enough? Or maybe it's a spectrum. Like maybe it's not a
Yeah.
line, maybe it's like a whole.
Well, it's interesting, because I love that you were just, moving your hands in this movement. That's what our nervous system does.
Yeah.
Our nervous system is never static.
Yeah.
It's always moving. So safe enough
Yeah.
is a moving point
Yeah.
along, some kind of a line. And it's so funny when you say that, because I used to do all of my exercises with clients. You draw a line, right?
Yeah.
And you draw up a line, a horizontal line from one point to the other, and then you create the continuum. And
Yeah.
one day I had a client who said, but I don't want to draw that kind of line. And it was like, oh my God, how long did it take me to figure out you don't have to draw a line that looks like this? So, now it's like, yes,
Mhm.
not only is it a moving point along a line, but the
Yeah.
line comes in all sorts of different shapes.
Mhm.
And what feels safe enough for me in this moment,
Yeah.
when I go to bed tonight, may not. I
Yeah.
may need something totally different. That,
Mm.
I think, is the beauty of working with the nervous system, is that, we're really just always, wondering, where am I in this moment, right? It's this in this moment
Yeah.
question,
Yeah.
right? What's safe enough in this moment, and then how might I build on that and carry that forward? And
Yeah.
then, tonight, what's safe enough in this moment? Because many of our clients, many of us, have trouble at night, right? Going to sleep, settling down. Lots of worry comes up. It seems to be a time in the human body that anxiety emerges. Night is scary.
I
We're
like
all
to call it the
sensory beings.
activation reflex, that when you
Well,
start to
yep,
settle the active,
yep.
as opposed to the relaxation reflex, it's the activation
Exactly.
reflex. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
what feels, you know, the what I need to bring in the conditions that make it safe enough for me to settle at the end of the day are very different from what I need here to be, you know, doing an active thing with you. That's the beauty of the nervous system, is to really partner with your nervous system to begin to listen and have those conversations. So
Yeah.
safe enough is, you know, in this moment, what's safe enough? We're making it even bigger, aren't we?
Yeah.
In this moment, safe
Yeah.
enough,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And, and that also reminds me of something I something I appreciate that both you and Steve have said, and I don't find it being said enough, of like that, we as humans are in flux. Safety cues are in flux. We are not a stagnant um you know thing. The nervous system is not a stagnant thing. And where that comes to be so important is like the idea of homeostasis. And I think so often, I mean, I went to how many grad schools, and they taught it where it's like homeostasis is this point that in which everything is balanced, like, but it's not a stagnant point. It's this whole range in which we can safely enough fluctuate in and have the stability and containment to do that.
Right. And sometimes
Yeah.
it's on my own, and sometimes it's with another, right? I mean, there are
Absolutely.
lots of different ways to be there as well.
Yeah.
Right. So I love that. I love that. Yeah. Homeostasis is interesting, you know, balance and that whole thing. It's like, wow, if I have to be in balance to be healthy, I'm in trouble. Gotta say it. Just saying. Right. But I can be moving in and out of this place of
Yeah.
balance. Right. And
Yeah.
I think it's that rhythmic movement that really brings us that sense of safety. If you think about movement, it's those jerky, chaotic, disorganized, sharp movements that bring us a sense of danger, but the
Yeah.
rhythmic movement brings us some sense of safety, and it's a lovely place to be,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Always in motion in some way. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, it's like to me, as you're saying that, also to go back to the, idea of homeostasis as a range where we can fluctuate in versus a stagnant point of where we should be. And it's like even our cholesterol, is on a range. Even our resting heart rate is in a range.
right.
And it's
Yeah.
like, and yet, so what we have often taught homeostasis, this idea of balance, to be a very small point,
Mm.
which is actually not very humanistic. It's not
It
very
is not.
kind.
It's not. It is not. It's not. It's not based in the way our biology actually
Yeah.
works. So I think when we begin to bring these things to light, then our clients begin to find some relief, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
clients too think this is safety, or
Yeah.
this is wellness, or this is healing,
Yeah.
right? Well, this is a moment and somebody's definition of,
Yeah.
but your nervous system is going to lead us to where we want to go. It
Yeah.
it is wise, and it knows
Yeah.
how to bring us to healing. We're going to learn to listen. So I like it that I don't have to know what healing is.
Yeah.
I just have to help my client listen to their nervous system. Their nervous system knows,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And I think it echoes so much of this idea, and at least in non-dual philosophies, and non-dual Buddhism and in Buddhism, of this idea of like, you know, the more we try to grasp at something, at life, and that's the control, which is different than agency, the more suffering we create in our lives.
yes.
But the more we can ride the waves, the fluctuations of life, the more resilient we are to being in relation to ourselves and in relation to what's happening in the world around us.
And I love that you said resilient and riding the wave, because really a resilient being
Yeah.
has a nervous system that moves in and out of regulation all the time,
Yeah.
in and out of levels of safety all the time. And the resilience comes when, like I was talking about, I was pulled out into that place of feeling unsafe and the messiness and found my way back. It's
Yeah.
the finding your way back that
Yeah.
creates resilience and creates
Right.
health, both physical and psychological well-being,
Yeah.
right? And again, if we begin to embrace that,
Yeah.
it's so much easier to
Yeah.
to feel good about how I'm moving through the world, because every human being moves in and out of these places of safety and connection
Yeah.
all the time,
All
all
the
the time,
time.
right?
Yeah, I remember a client maybe a couple years ago said to me, she was like, "Oh, I'm concerned. I just had a dissociative experience." And I said, are you, I experience you very present in your body now." She's like, "Oh yeah, yeah." And I was like, "So if I understand you right, you went away, but you found your way home." And she was like, "Oh, yeah." And I was like, "Beautiful, beautiful resilience, beautiful work that you did." She's like, "So I don't need to be concerned?" And I was like, I, you found your way home. That's resilience.
Right. Let's celebrate that. Let's
Let's
not be concerned.
celebrate it.
Let's celebrate it.
Yeah.
Right. That's
Yeah.
the mark of a healthy human who finds
Yeah.
their way home. Right.
Yeah.
That's what we're all trying to do, find the way home. And
Yeah.
it's interesting to, as we shape our systems differently, as
Yeah.
our biology changes, our stories emerge differently. Our brain then, says, "Oh, maybe people aren't dangerous."
Mm,
Right. I'm having an experience of Scott being
yeah.
predictably regulated, and that feels kind of good,
Yeah.
right? And it's challenging my neural expectations and the story I've made up about people,
Yeah.
right? This is how change happens,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, yeah.
Mm, so beautifully said.
Mm,
I think we'll land here. Oh, that was so juicy.
it's
Thank,
lovely.
thank you so much, Deb, as always, for your incredible, beautiful wisdom and bright soul.
Oh, thank
And
you.
thank you so much.